He wanted to be here tonight, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. In fact, he'll be there for the majority of spring training. Behind the scenes and running the show, DJ Scatter, George Walker. How are you doing this evening, Mr. Walker?
I'm doing just fine here.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm Brian Kress, the awesome voice. And tonight we have a guest on the show, Darian Thomas, who and if you reacted how I reacted when I first saw him Sunday, he looks just like his father, Derek Thomas. Darian, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So Sunday, and I've got to tell the story a little bit. So Sunday, you were at Third Street Social, and we had a high school reunion committee, which was our 40th high school reunion. And I'm sitting there. We're outside because it was beautiful weather. It was in the 70s, and we were talking, and all of a sudden I look across and I look at you, and I go, I know that guy, but I just can't place him.
Yeah.
And now, did you notice me looking at you?
We were kind of running around Lee Summit all day, so maybe a little bit, but and then I kind of turned around and we kind of locked eyes, and I was like, then I think we started talking just a little bit. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, because you were just sitting there. Everybody else was talking. Your girlfriend was talking, and the people that was with you. Well, we were doing our thing. So you got up, and you walked by me, and you dropped two buttons, which is this, 58 for 58. And I go, oh my gosh, now I know. So I asked you if you'd come on the show, and you graciously did, and I greatly appreciate that. So saying that, Super Bowl 58.
Right.
Now, how long had you thought about 58 for 58?
I think probably from the start of the season. I mean, people had, just with the kind of correlation, people had kind of mentioned it, and hey, it'd be great if we could go do this thing for your dad. And I was, at the start of the season, I was like, oh yeah, that could be really cool, be something really special, especially for something for him where he never got to achieve that accomplishment, to be able to go to the Super Bowl. It kind of felt like something that would be kind of an homage to him and what he did for Kansas City. So in the beginning of the season, yeah, we talked about it, but as we struggled a little bit through the season, it kind of was like, oh well, it was a good thought, but
right. Right. So saying that, you watched your father play. Now, you were very young when he played at that time, and you got to sit on the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
So, what was your dad's reactions to not being able to make it to the Super Bowl? Because at that time, I grew up, with the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, so I just know barely after that. So a lot of players went to school. So how did he react? Because the Chiefs were the best team that we had since the Super Bowl years.
Yeah. I mean, it was there were some tough times around my house growing up. Around those years where we just almost missed it, or there was some some instance that happened that pushed them out. I mean, the field goal debacle, that was one. Him running into the punter, that was another. So I mean, it was something that he took very serious, as far as he wanted to be the best. He wanted to, obviously, the Pro Bowls were nice. They went to pretty much every year. The Hall of Fame was, of course, a goal, but also, one of the big goals was the Super Bowl. And so, those years that we went out and especially got the pieces that we needed, and had one what I, looking back, feel like was one of the best teams. I mean, knowing those guys off the field, and being around them as a kid, I thought they were, great people off the field, but then, my older years, I've gone back and actually looked at some of those games and understood, how good those teams were, and just not being able to get over the hump. It's disheartening for me to see and actually fully understand the game of football now, and understand what they weren't able to accomplish. I understand my frustration and knowing how frustrated he was back in those days. I can really.
So when did you realize, as you got older, when did you start realizing how important that was? Because I know maybe as a younger, you just kind of was there.
Yeah. I always knew. I always knew my dad was a special person, big part of Kansas City. That was evident, and when we traveled or when we went anywhere, it was, we were pretty much bombarded. Where people always wanted to talk to him or take a picture or an autograph, and he and I went to the stadium every Sunday together. So I got the full experience to experience Arrowhead, in some of its loudest days, and so I understood what the gravity of who he was, but I don't maybe think or know that I realized the magnitude of some of the other players that were on those teams that were part of those teams. And probably I was maybe 15 or 16 when I started to kind of look into, or started to reconnect with some of those guys who were on teams that my dad was on. Those guys would come back to Kansas City, and I'd go to events, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot that Marcus Allen played here. I forgot that like Mark McMillan and Dan Sayamua and Tamarick Vanover and Andre Wright and all those guys were here and around, and those are some big hitting talents. So I was like, man, we really had some good talent in those days.
Yes, you did. Now, saying that, Derek Thomas, your dad, was more like Patrick Mahomes today. He was the man. And Neil Smith was kind of like Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
So, with that, do you still talk with him all the time, or do you still communicate?
Yeah. Actually, I spoke with him last week. I see him around from time to time. He's still in Lee Summit, so whenever I get out there, I'll usually give him a shout and see what he's up to. He's chairman of the board for my dad's Third Long Foundation. So we talk to each other through meetings and at the events that we have through our foundation. I see him. I see him pretty regularly.
That's cool. So, as when you were younger, did you have a hard time? Did you struggle with people always wanting to come up to him? Because, you're like, I want to spend time with my dad, and yet, all of us want to go and gravitate to him.
I think at a early age, having to understand that, you're sharing this parent with the world, basically. It's it's a difficult thing to do, because there's a million things on the schedule that have to be done. But I feel like he did a pretty good job to make sure that when we did have that time, or when we did go on vacations, or that when we were having family time, to try to distance us from the whole kind of monotony of everything. There's an instance that I can clearly remember where we were having dinner at Rooster Chris, and we were sitting down, and a couple fans came up and just said, hey, can you sign this for me? And he politely said, hey, let me finish dinner with my kid, and I'll get you after. And that's just kind of how we kind of handled those things, and it means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to fans, but it meant a lot to me to be able to have those experiences with him, even though he was who he was on a day-to-day basis.
And saying that, it's kind of like I said, like Patrick Mahomes. He was Superman at that time.
Yeah.
So it's like, he needs to save the Chiefs, save the game. Everybody, wants to, and at the same time, you're just kind of like, he's my dad, you know. I just love him because he's my dad. Uh, Saying that, you know, he got, as he got older in his later years, and obviously his later years was about your age.
Yeah.
So, and he was still playing, but was he, how long did you think he could have played?
Um, I think he felt like he could have played through another contract. I know he was in negotiations for his next contract. So I mean, I know he felt like he had at least a few more years in him. I mean, there was talks of maybe going to um, in the contract negotiation. There was talks of him possibly even going to another team. I know there was contract conversations with Detroit, which there was a one-off ever made Derek Thomas jersey from when he visited Detroit, and yeah, so I mean he was fully ready and prepped to to continue on for a few more years at least.
So, saying that, how was his relationship with Lamar Hunt?
Oh, I mean his relationship with Lamar was I mean they had one of the best I feel like owner player relationships. They he really appreciated what they or what Lamar did for football and what Lamar did for Kansas City. Um, on the flip side, I think he had you know as some people know, my dad was a conspiracy theorist and thought that maybe in some way through government connections that they somehow were involved in disputes that when my grandfather was shot down, he was none too happy about that. But as far as their relationship of those two as people and as owner player or boss deal, he really respected Lamar for what he was able to do in that combination of Lamar and Carl Peterson. They really he really grew to respect them, and he'd always say, hey, or when he had to go to the stadium and talk to Carl, he'd always say, well, I got to go to the principal's office. He in his later years, he kind of referred to him as a father figure and things like that. But that relationship there between him and the front office was always pretty solid.
Oh, that's great. So, saying that, did he have a conspiracy theory on winning and losing games too?
I don't know that. I mean, I think he went out every game, for the most part, truly feeling like we would win, just considering, the amount of effort and the way he played every game. I don't think that, if you looked at him, everybody talks about his motor, everybody talks about how he played the game. I don't think that he ever went into any game, feeling like they were going to lose. I mean, maybe in those early days when we were just bad, but
Right.
As we progressed and as those pieces came along and we started to put the thing together, I don't think he ever went to the stadium thinking that they would lose a game.
Well, I truly believe that, and so I know that he made Arrowhead what it is today. I mean, everybody comes out there. It's the loudest stadium in football. I don't care what Seattle says. I disagree.
Yeah, I think the stadium may have been even louder in those days than it is now. I mean, I know with the change out of the seats, that has changed changed some of the noise making, the instruments some people use to make that noise. So, but I mean, I think those days and those defenses, created some of the most intense atmospheres ever in the game of football, and and I think those guys were a major part of it because I feel like those guys were I mean, the guys now, they're a huge part of the community. They're in the community. People love seeing them. But I think in those days, they were truly. You could go to Westport and see those guys out on a random a random night, or you could see those guys out, on just having dinner at a local restaurant. And I mean, I think social media has completely changed that. I don't think those guys can do that same thing anymore. But I think the community was much more engaged with the players on a different level than maybe they are now.
Well, and I know that, and I know that the crowds get loud. The game in particular was the Denver game where John Elway kept stopping the official, and the official would say, "If you don't quiet down, we're going to throw a penalty," and it just get louder and louder. So
yeah, I actually talked to. I was having a conversation at a Super Bowl, at the Super Bowl in Minnesota. That would have been 2019 or so.
was that
It was the Eagles Patriots Super Bowl, and I was talking to Dan Marino and John Elway. We were all talking about that game and talking about just the experiences they had playing my dad, and then it was like, yeah, those are some of the worst days that I had in the mental preparation for those games, and then Work Dunn came up, and he was talking to us, and he was like, I was never worried about blocking anybody. He was like, I never worried about that, but he was like, when your dad came along, because he could run around you, he could juke you, he could run through you. So it was like, he was like, truly, it was difficult to have to game plan with him, even with the tackle blocking him or being the primary blocker. For me to even have to step up and chip him was always difficult. So it's always great to kind of talk to those guys and get their perspective on, because those are guys that were in the trenches with him, that played against him, and to have those experiences and be able to be around those guys and listen to their stories of those days. I mean, it's always a part that I love.
Now, how does it make you feel to hear stories like that? To hear from these other Hall of Fame players, and they talk about your dad the way they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling. I mean, when you think about some of the names that are that are talking about him, or that are having these memories, it's like, those are guys that everybody looks up to, and they're saying how they were having issues blocking him, or how they had to game plan for him. I had the pleasure of having a conversation with John Gruden one night. And he talked about how on defense he didn't think that there was, or on offense, how there wasn't one single player that he could really think of, apart from very few, that they had to really sit down and game plan for, and shift the protections and shift the run support and things like that to limit his impact on the game. And so when you think about that, even with all that, he was still able to make plays. He was still able to do, what he was able to do with his sack numbers and things like that. I mean, it just makes you think of, how good he really was, what he was able to do on the field.
Right, absolutely. So you were born the year that he got the NFL record of 7 sacks in a game.
Yeah.
And I remember that game like it was yesterday, because I had watched the game for the majority of it, and just watching him just dominate the way he did. And then I go to Price Chopper out in Granby, because that's where I live, and I'm listening, and I'm like, oh, it's over. I'm going in to get my groceries and everything, and I come back out, and all of a sudden it sounded like it was a funeral.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it sounded like Buffalo fans and San Francisco fans.
Yeah.
But I was like, what the heck happened? And then he turned around, missed what would have been his 8th sack, and Dave Craig throws the game-winning pass. And I'm just like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he talked about that for a long time, and, think there's a quote on an interview that he did not years after that. I think the quote is he remembered that day and that day was special to him, um, but the sack that he remembered was the sack that he didn't get. And I mean, I think that kind of speaks to who he was and his character. I mean, here you are setting a record that still to this day has not really been close to being touched. I think 4 or 5 is what people average, and the only person that's come close to that, after he set that record was him again against the Raiders, and he had 6. So, think about those numbers. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about the NFL Combine that's going on currently, and we're talking about his 50. I want to say it was 50 plus sacks that he had in college. And you're looking at some of these guys' numbers, and it's like 14 in a year is winning defensive player of the year, and and I mean, you look at those numbers and you're like, wow. I mean, that's in another league as to what numbers the other guys were putting up.
And I remember him Alabama just getting sacked after sack, and I want to say he had roughly 20 sacks that year, 25 sacks.
Yeah, I think it was 20. I think his senior year was 27.
Yeah. And that was an NCAA record at that time, and I don't know if anybody has broken that since.
Yeah.
So, but then the draft comes, and there's 2 Thomases, Broderick Thomas and Derek Thomas, and they both played at Alabama.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I hope we get the right Thomas.
Yeah, they were actually. I still kept in touch with Brod. Brod's what my dad called him, but I've kept in touch with Broderick over the years. So. They were really good friends, and the quote from Carl is that when he saw him play and when he went and worked out with him, he knew that was going to be their guy, because they weren't sure if he was going to be a DN, wasn't sure he was going to be a linebacker, so they had run him at both positions just to kind of check and make sure, and he was like there wasn't any one thing he couldn't do, and
Now a lot of people have said if he had a weakness was stopping the run.
Yeah.
And because he was so full-fledged into wanting to sack the quarterback.
Right.
So do you think that's a fair assessment to say, or is it because of his great ability to sack the quarterback that they say that's everybody has to have a fault?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, I would say the only negative really deals that kind of Carl and Marty kind of came up with was to have him put his hand in the ground, and that, I mean, whenever I look back at film or look at him as a player, I mean, that was never really where he should have been, or I mean, on maybe third down and rush or in pass situations, maybe you put a hand in the ground, but to look at him as a true lineman or 4-down lineman, 3-down lineman, that puts you in a position where you're not standing up and at. He was listed at 250, but he probably played in the 225 range or so. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when you're talking about going into a down lineman stance versus 300-pound lineman, I mean you're going to lose some battles. I mean, so I mean, if that's a knock towards him, I mean, I guess, I mean, you're trying to, for him as a person, I mean, he's trying to as a rush specialist, I mean, your first step is going into the backfield, or when you're reading the play. I mean, but sometimes when you're offenses are game planning, I mean, their deal is to make you think they're passing the ball so you can get upfield and so they can push you upfield, or to put that speed and put that and to put your advantages to a disadvantage. Screen plays, things like that to slow you down. So I mean, I think they use that to their advantage to try to throw him off. But like I said, I think him putting his hand in the ground, was one of those things that kind of gave him issues later on in his career.
Well, the thing that I think about is I saw Lawrence Taylor play.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still young enough but old enough that I seen him play. I never saw Lawrence Taylor one time put his hand down. Maybe I could probably count on one hand.
Right.
But he always stood up. So for Derek to have his hand on the ground, yeah, I totally get that. And with that, we are at halftime on Any Given Sunday. We're here with Darian Thomas, son of Derek Thomas, and we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we will discuss some more Chiefs football and your dad and you. And we'll talk about your school and how you managed, playing and how you compared it with him. So we'll be right back after this.
All right.
All right, we're back for the second half of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. 816-599-6893 is the phone number. If you'd like to call in and maybe ask him a question or speak your piece, you can do that. George Walker behind the scenes. Coach 24 is in Surprise, Arizona for spring training, and I'm the Awesome Voice, and we're here with Darian Thomas. And so you went to high school at Blue Spring South.
Yeah.
So when you played at Blue Spring South, what position did you play first?
When I first started out, I was what we refer to as our jag linebacker. So kind of a free safety, strong safety hybrid type position, which we played a 3-3 stack. So that position has had a lot of freedom to roam around and a lot of opportunities to, it was almost as like a fourth linebacker.
Okay, so then you had 5 DBs, so-called.
Yeah.
So 3 and 3. So did you play outside or inside?
I was playing. A lot of times we played inside the box, and then through playing some scout team and kind of trying to fill out the game. actually went into playing, or actually started playing defensive end, you know, kind of middle of the season, or kind of after camp, going in the first couple of games, started to play defensive end.
Gotcha. So when you started playing defensive end, linebacker, did you try to mimic playing like your dad?
I would say, I'd say probably not. When I first started playing, because I was through my first 3 years of high school, I actually was a swimmer. That was my primary sport growing up, and was talent or was able to win 2 state championships in swimming, in different events. So that was that was my focus, and I had a little bit of an injury swimming, and so football kind of replaced that, and so started playing football my junior year. Like I said, kind of first year kind of bopped around, didn't really know what I wanted to do or really understand. I mean, I was around football my whole life, but as far as understanding and knowing all the intricacies of it, I never played. I mean, so my junior year was my first time ever strapping up pads, and so the first year was pretty much a learning experience, and then going into that summer of my senior year, was able to go to a couple of camps. Went to camp at Alabama, went to MU for camps. Some of those guys from my dad's from Neil. Some of those guys were gracious enough to help me out and kind of understanding some of the skill sets and learning everything that I needed to learn. And then my senior year was able to start and be able to have a pretty good year there, and be able to have a good amount of colleges come calling there towards the end of the year. So the biggest knock is I didn't really have game film, but I had 1 or 2 extraordinary games where one against Rockhurst High School in the state semifinal game, had 4.5 sacks on Nathan Chillhouse, who went on to become the 4-year starter at Illinois, and
Yep.
So that was kind of I guess kind of my coming out party, and that was when all the recruits came calling. So
Gotcha. And wasn't that a special moment for you too?
Yeah. That game was the first game that I that wore my dad's shoulder pads during a game. So that was it was I'm gonna say eerie. It was a big deal. I just felt like my whole game, everything that I'd learned, the attitude of where, the entire season, where we kind of weren't living up to exactly who we could be, and the mindset, I guess, all kind of came together in that game, and I put together pretty good game.
So when you put him on, what was your mindset when you did that?
So I guess the biggest thing putting them on was just wow, they fit. I mean, that was the most shocking thing. I mean, when strapping them up, I mean, it pretty much strapped to the same buckle that he used to buckle it into, which you can see from when you buckle them, where it had bent, or where it was kind of
Tight on.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it was putting them on. First thing was just shock. Wow, they fit. Second is, well, tonight could be really something special. And then it was just I think one of my coaches just said, you can't be blocked. If you don't want to be blocked, you can't be blocked. I've seen you play. I've seen you, it's time to let loose. And, if you don't want to be blocked tonight, you can't be blocked. And I went in the game with that mindset. And it was a heck of a night.
So with that, did you continue on wearing the shoulder pads?
I wore them for the next 2 games, and then of course, in going to college, they give you your own shoulder. They fit you and measure, and you have your own special built shoulder pads that fit you. So, I mean, I still have them, and they're still around, but I retired those after the state championship my senior year.
So you guys did you guys win? I cannot
Yeah,
remember. I keep thinking.
Oh, way to bring up a sore subject.
Oh.
No, it still hurts to, but no, we actually we lost that one. I want to say by a touchdown.
Who did you guys play again?
We played Hazelwood Central out of St. Louis.
Yeah.
And it was and unfortunately I'd broken my arm in that Rockhurst game as well, so was a little bit of a limited asset. I mean, I still played the whole game, but
Right.
what wasn't what I wanted, or wasn't the performance that I wish I could have put together. So
So you never even played football until your junior year of high school.
right.
Now, why was that? Why didn't you choose to play football?
I from the start, I was a swimmer, like I said, and so through my childhood, that was really my main focus. I originally did it to help strengthen my lungs because I had really bad asthma growing up, and so my doctor felt like that was the best way for me to strengthen my lungs through swimming lessons and stuff like that. And then eventually, when I was 7 or 8, then joined an actual swim team, and then it just went on and on from there. Was super competitive. Was able to nationals, senior nationals, all the way up to qualifying for an Olympic trials, and so that was really the focus, and so it just never came up. I went out for a team with my cousin, who was 4 years older than me, and so I think I went to a couple practices, and then I was like, I don't think this is really for me. And my dad actually was coached the team for the time that I was on it. But it just wasn't for me, and he didn't push me to play football. I mean, he was very much so whatever I wanted to do, whatever. I mean, at one point, he and I conspired to start a go-kart racing team behind my mom's back. Yeah.
I hope your mom's not watching.
Well, I mean, she found out and the jig was up, and we didn't we didn't even make it to the starting line. So I mean, but we had big aspirations to become a great racing team. But he loved NASCAR. I loved cars and racing at that point, and so we were dead set that's what we were going to do, and we never made it. But
that is so awesome. So saying that, so when you did go out for football your junior year, did the coaches or other players try to think that you were the next DT?
I think I got asked to come out for football my sophomore year of high school, and it was based on my track coach sat me down, and he basically said, I'm not asking you this because of who your dad was, but I think, or I've seen you is at a track meet, and he just said, hey, based on what you just ran in the 400, what I've seen you do athletically, would you just think about it? And so, based on kind of the injury that happened a few months after that, I kind of sat down and then I was like, oh, well, I mean, my main sport is kind of put on the back burner for a little bit with the shoulder injury. people always ask, if you had a shoulder injury, how'd you end up playing football?
Exactly.
The biggest issue was the training, the constant rotation, shoulder rotation.
Gotcha.
So I could push, I could push weight, and that never bothered me. But, to go swim, what it takes, the, 5, 6, 7,000 yards a day that you need to be putting in to be competitive and, in a high level of swimming, it just, my shoulder wasn't able to do that. So I ended up going out for swimming.
It is amazing how different sports you have to use certain parts of your body. You just think, okay, you're going to go swimming, you're going to use the same stuff as you would playing baseball or playing basketball or playing football.
Yeah.
And it's not.
No, yeah. And so, one thing that did carry over from swimming was just conditioning. That was one of the biggest things that, my coaches from high school, even through my coaches in college, when I got to the University of Missouri, was, they were like, I think one of my coaches at Mizzou just running, and it was like, you don't look like you're tired. You're not breathing hard. You're not overexerting. And I'm like, well, in swimming, in those big time races and in training, if you breathe more than once or twice in a race, you pretty much lost. So,
Right.
We have a lot of, as a swimmer, you learn, breath control. You learn how to, breathe through, fatigue, and you understand how to, replenish your body in those short times where you get a chance to breathe. So, everybody else would be, and I got yelled at a couple times by my teammates. They'd be like, all right, well, you're not running as hard as you can. And I'm like, I am running as hard as I can. I just don't over exert myself and look like I'm fatigued, because you have to keep your composure, as you're breathing through swimming. So I had to have that conversation with my coaches. I'm like, listen, I am running as hard as I can.
So Coach Pinkle did not like that.
Yeah, no, they want you, they want you to look like you're overexerting and sweating. And I was like, that's just not the way I was taught to play sports. So
Right.
that was a little bit of getting used to.
So how was your career at Missouri? How did you enjoy it? Where did it lead you to?
Yeah, it was interesting. I originally went to Mizzou as kind of a rush specialist. That was what that was a lot of what I did in high school. Became pretty a pass rusher. So in getting to Mizzou and starting out, I was undersized. I was probably 215, 200 pounds when I got to Mizzou. And then there was the switch to the SEC, and a 210 pound, 220 pound defensive end doesn't work in the SEC.
No.
It's a completely different game. But I learned a ton there. Was able to work my way from learn the skills of football. When you get to that college level and that upper echelon of college programs, which Mizzou was achieving then. We beat number 1 Oklahoma when I was there. Back-to-back SEC championships games. It was, to be there during those times, was truly something special. So my game progressed, my knowledge of the game progressed, and at one point was running with the twos there, 2-3 kind of even, through most of my junior season, and then into my senior season. So I had a great experience there. I felt with some of the things that were happening that I left with 1 year eligibility left, but kind of with some of the things that were going on, I kind of just felt like it was time for me to move on. But I really enjoyed my time at Mizzou. My teammates at Mizzou were truly still friends of mine to this day. We had a great brotherhood there. And if anybody is thinking about going to Mizzou or playing football at Mizzou, that's truly one of the biggest things that I took away from Mizzou. It was truly, you know, everybody was solid. I mean, we, like I said, I still talk to a lot of those guys till this day.
And that's great. And those relationships are always so awesome. So, did you try to go into the NFL?
So I kind of talked about it, you know, because after leaving Mizzou that year early, I kind of, you know, started my own thing, started my gym, you know, started a personal training fitness facility in Kansas City, and wouldn't say after, you know, I think any athlete after they get done with sports, it's always, you know, it's always that what if, or it's always like, oh yeah, I can keep playing, or oh yeah, you know, you just miss the game, you miss the camaraderie, you miss hanging out with the guys, and so yeah, I mean, I wanted to you know, have a tryout, I wanted to get back on the field, but one of the reasons that I left Mizzou early is because, I mean, I'd had knee surgery my sophomore year, and so that injury really kind of followed me through the next few years, and, you know, having to wear braces and having to, you know, really stay on the pain meds and things like that pretty consistently. So, you know, when trying to ramp back up training and you know, putting the weight back on the bar and doing things like that, I mean, it let me know it was still there. So I kind of backed off of that dream, but yeah, I mean, I learned to you know, love that time that I had at Mizzou and cherish everything that I was able to do in sports over my life, and you know, it became helping other people become healthy and live their best life. That became my new goal and my new focus. So
Absolutely. So, saying that, what did football teach you in today's world?
um,
What does it bring to you now that you learned from playing football?
I think the biggest thing is probably the teamwork aspect, handling adverse situations. We had a thing at Mizzou called Gun Club, and it's probably one of the single hardest things I've ever done in my life, physically, mentally. I mean, I think at Alabama they had kind of the same thing when my dad played. I think they called it the fifth quarter or something like that. But I mean, it's truly. I mean, they try in every way to break you mentally, physically, and the guys that come out on the other end, you know, are the guys that you go into battle with on Saturdays. So, you know, that taught me that, you know, I could do anything. I mean, not that I hadn't already had a little bit of that experience, but, you know, being a part of that and having to work as a team with all the guys around me, and, you know, having to push through a lot of those things, going through my knee injury, and working back through that, you know, just, you know, having the mental fortitude and having the trainers and the guys around me to help me push back from that. You know, I ended up, you know, my recovery for that was almost 8 months. So, I mean, so, I mean, it was a pretty significant chunk of time that of, you know, being out and, you know, having to mentally be able to handle that, you know, day after day of watching everybody else get better, and you know, you're just kind of not even at the starting line yet, but, you know, to be able to understand and have the mindset that, you know, I have to be where I have to start from my point A, and, you know, everybody else's point A is not my point A. So, you know, I got to work from where I am to get to where I need to be, and they may be at a different spot, but, you know, we're all working toward the same thing. So, a lot of lessons there. I mean, too many to even, you know, it would take us a whole day to go through what all the things I learned there. But yeah, but those are the biggest things. I mean, you know, just handling adversity and, you know, just trying your hardest every day. That was the biggest thing, and competing for what you want.
Absolutely. So, you have 58 Fitness. And where is that?
So we don't have 58 Fitness anymore. We've done we're doing a couple things with a couple companies as far as corporate wellness stuff through 58 Fitness. But as far as our brick and mortar, that went away in 2018, and we started working towards doing more corporate fitness programs and going into companies and helping them helping the workforce become healthier. So we're working on doing some more of those things after COVID. That kind of shut that down. So getting back into doing a few different corporate wellness programs and starting to as people get back to work and get back into their buildings, we're able to engage people at their workplace now and help them work out. So yeah, that's what we're doing there.
And so now you do Thomas 58 Construction. Now you are the president of the company. And who started that company?
So I started out with a friend of mine, and this was after closing the gym and kind of trying to figure out the route. We were doing corporate wellness, but that was kind of still in its infancy stage. And a friend kind of said, hey, if you have some extra time, could you help me out? I'm starting a construction company. Would you have some extra time? And I said, hey, I'll help you. I can help you, with some of the back office stuff, with some of the systems. Because that's what gyms are all about, is building systems and, just repetitive over and over. So I said, I can help you do that. I've been doing it for the past, 5-6 years, basically. And so he and I started out and started doing it so much. I was like, hey, this is, I kind of like this busy business. I'd always been into construction and building things. And I originally wanted to go to MU to get into their engineering school, but quickly learned that playing sports and being in a high demand, degree field like that is, I was like, this is going to be, this is going to be all my time.
Massive challenge.
Yeah. So, with understanding that, I kind of pivoted, but always, so when I got that opportunity to get back into it, I jumped at the opportunity, and we have since ended that partnership, but I've still continued to grow in that industry, and that's what I do day to day now.
So you do that. So how much are you involved with the Third and Long Foundation? Now, I know that Neil Smith is the chairman. What's your role in that?
So currently I'm a board member. Currently I'm a board member there, and just being a part of what my dad started. I was away from it for a long time. Through growing up, and really only got back into being a part of Third and Long after college. When I was back in Kansas City, moved back in Kansas City, got reestablished here. Had the opportunity to join the board, and then that kind of built into, and then now we're doing a lot of different things and rebuilding a lot of things that maybe were a little, wouldn't say stagnant, but where we're not doing as to the best of our abilities, and so with Neil coming on, and with Tim Grunhard coming on as a board member, and Christian KUAW, who's we've gotten a lot of momentum, and I hope to help keep that momentum. Those guys have given us a great jump start from where we were, and so we're just continuing to push to do the things that we're doing in the community. We mentor 58 kids a year and give them different enrichment opportunities through going to football games for those who have never been, to giving them etiquette experiences. We do anti-bullying stuff with the FBI. We give them different enrichment programs to allow them to better themselves, and inspire them to learn and want to get into different things. So, we fed 1,500 families this past Thanksgiving. We give out 15 plus scholarships every year. we're doing great things in the community, and even though my dad's been gone 24 years now, we're still doing a lot of the things that he was able to do in the community, and hopefully trying to do them even better.
Absolutely. So we've got these buttons, and show them.
Oh.
If you want to, yeah, it doesn't show
Yeah,
it very
it's
well.
a little glaring a little bit.
So there we go. There you
There you
go.
go.
We got it. So if I wanted to get one, how do I obtain one?
Yeah, so we still have people that are ordering them. So best way is probably reach out to me through Facebook, or we will get those out through another channel, and I'll get it to you for your next show to be able to tell people. But the buttons are $5, and that part of that goes to the Third and Long Foundation to help us continue what we're doing. But yeah, if you're a friend of mine on Facebook or want to reach out to me, I can get those out to you. The Postal Service has been.
I work for the Postal Service. I deliver out in Lee Summit. Now, don't you live out in Lee Summit?
I'm in Westport now, but
okay.
this was my first experience with mailing large scales of packages. Mm-hmm. So I mailed close to 140 to 160 packages, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And man, I think maybe 60% of them actually got to there. So
wow.
But yeah, so I'm still getting buttons out to people.
And
Things are still
t-shirts?
going out. And t-shirts. I didn't wear the t-shirt tonight, but yeah, so the t-shirt is a similar design to the button. But yeah, we're still getting out the buttons and the t-shirts, and like I said, part of those proceeds go to support the Third and Long Foundation. And it's just something that the buttons and the t-shirts were born out of a deal that we had during the funeral. There was a 58 button that was given out then, and so a friend of mine actually wanted to wear one of the funeral pins during the playoff run, and I said, yeah, you can, for sure you can wear it. And then it kind of became a thing at the AFC Championship game. He made sure to text me and say, hey, I got your pins on. I got the pins on. We're gonna go do this thing. And then so after we won the game, it was just like well, hey, it'd be really cool being Super Bowl 58 if we could have the masses out there supporting and carrying on my dad's legacy. So yeah, so that was what that was born out of, and it became a way larger thing than what I could ever imagine. So I appreciate all the support of Kansas City, and the fact that everybody still supports my dad.
Your dad was amazing. Now I've only met him like once or twice, and just to say hi, but I grew up watching him. I do a prediction show. I've done it like 8 years now. And so when I said that when the Chiefs made it to the Super Bowl, all I said was Super Bowl Derek Thomas. I'd never even said Super Bowl 58. It was always Super Bowl Derek Thomas. And and friends of mine, they all they were just all excited for that, because Derek Thomas, your dad, was a huge part. In fact, Derek Thomas, I think alone, and I'll give other people credit because it wasn't totally him, but I will say that him pretty much brought football back to Kansas City the way it should be.
Truly.
And I will never personally forget that. Now, saying this, if your father was sitting there in that seat, what would you say to him, or what would you ask him?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many conversations that I think I've kind of mentioned this, or maybe in another interview. But I mean, the biggest thing that I struggle with as far as his passing and not having him here is really those conversations that I can't have with him. when I need guidance, or when I need, or what would you do in this situation, or how would you handle this? So, I mean, so many conversations, but what conversation does a father have with his son? I mean, that's, you want to confide in them. You want to, you want them to build you up. You want them to, have that discipline when you're wrong. And, yeah, I mean, so many conversations. I can't necessarily say just one, but I will say, even though I wasn't able to have those conversations with him, my mom has always been she's been my rock. She's been there for me throughout, his passing, and, has always been there for me. So, I always like to, pay my, my, respects to her, and she truly helped me through this whole thing, and still continues to be there for me. So, like I said, it's not the same as having him here and having those conversations with him, but there's a lot of people in my life who've stepped up and been that father figure, and to those people I'm grateful, because they didn't have to, and they've always been there for me. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you had to say something to the people that are listening right now, what would you like to say?
The biggest thing for me when I think about these things, or doing these interviews, is just I think to understand who my dad was off the field as a person. He wasn't perfect by any means, by any stretch, and I think sometimes we get bogged down on that, and I see some of the stuff that happens in present day, and I think back to those times when my dad was playing, and I'm like, it's hard not to, for these things to happen. I mean, when you have that amount of attention on you, and people that count on you and things like that. I mean, to remember, I look back, I'm 33 now, and to look back on some of the responsibilities and the pressures that were put on him throughout his life, I wonder, how do you not trip up, or how do you not, have those moments of downward spiral, if I mean, I think that's the best way to put it. But just understand that those guys are human. My dad was human, and but they did, and he did the best he could with with what he, with who he was. So that, and then I truly am humbled to be a part of this community, and to be around the Chiefs Kingdom, and for what people have done for my dad and my family and the Third Long Foundation. I'd say thank you to our Chiefs Kingdom, for everything they've done for me.
Absolutely. Well said. And I know we're way past our time, but
sorry about that.
No, and that's okay. So it is well worth it. So I thank you for coming out. I greatly appreciate that. So and you are welcome to come back on the show.
Yeah.
So and then we've got some other things we'll talk about. So next week, when I do my show again, we will talk about more being able to get buttons or T-shirts through the Third and Long Foundation, 58 for 58, which is why I wore your dad's jersey. Now, just real quick, when you see people wear your dad's jersey, what does that make you?
Oh, it's one of the best feelings I have, because you see that throughout the stadium, that you have your Pat Mahomes jersey, you have your 85 jerseys, but before this whole Taylor Swift thing happened, I think behind Pat, my dad was second in jersey sales, for Kansas City, and 24 years later, and we're still having that number of people that are purchasing jerseys. I mean, I still have people come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to buy my son or my husband or my daughter, one of your dad's jerseys. Where can I find one? Where can I get one?" So I mean, there's still people purchasing them. There's still, there's still people carrying on that legacy. Fathers that are telling their sons, fathers that are telling their daughters about, who he was and what he did for Kansas City, and how, for people to understand that what we're experiencing now truly started in the 90s, and those teams that really brought, like you said, brought football back to Kansas City. So, like, it's humbling to me, and I appreciate it every time I see one of those jerseys. And a lot of times I'll go up and talk to those guys, or go up and talk to people that have the jerseys on, because, those are the people that keep my dad's legacy alive along with myself. So I always want to give them my appreciation, and just tell them how special that is to me.
Absolutely. And with that, we are in overtime, and now we are ending, just like the Chiefs in Super Bowl 58 and Super Bowl Derek Thomas. We went overtime and we won. So we are at the end of Any Given Sunday on KUAW. We've got George Walker, DJ Scatter behind the scenes. We have Coach 24 Darwin Penny, and I am Brian Kress, the awesome voice with Darian Thomas. Be awesome, not angry, and you guys have yourself a phenomenal Derek Thomas weekend.